I'd like to call this meeting to order. Amanda, would you kindly lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please. With our major holidays approaching and family being together, I would like us to reflect a little bit and give a couple of minutes of thanks to the troops around the world, our local police, our local fire, EMS, for what they do. Give them the strength to keep protecting this great nation. Godspeed for those that have given their lives for our protection. Thank you.
I'd like to announce that this is being live streamed.
Hi out there in YouTube land.
Good evening, everybody.
Camilla is gone.
John?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to introduce Amanda.
Oh, yes, it'd be a great pleasure to introduce Amanda Ball, who has replaced Joanne Morgan as of about a month ago as our new receptionist. Amanda comes to us via an eye doctor down in town. She is a proud graduate of Westchester Henderson High School. And that's it. Would you like to say anything more about yourself?
Oh, you missed the most
anything?
important thing.
And she lives in East Bradford Township.
Yes, your taxes are going up. Oh my God, I'd like to receive that.
Amanda, welcome to the township. And I can tell with your personality that you are going to be a shining star.
Thank you.
You're here.
I can vouch for it. She can handle all types.
Okay, we'll move on to the chairman's report. The board met on executive session for a personnel matter, ABC interviews, on November 26th. The board will conduct a public hearing on December 17th to consider the TND ordinances. The ordinances are posted on the website. The board will hold their reorganization meeting on Monday, January 6th, 2020 at 6 p.m. The Chester County Water Resources Authority will be holding a public input meeting at the East Goshen Township Building on Thursday, December 12th at 7 p.m. And we have received a notification regarding the CZ woodworking that the applicant, Chris Sumpano, accepts the conditions of the approval in the November 12, 2019 order for operation of the applicant's woodworking business as a home occupation on the property located at 1422 Ardley Circle. The acceptance of these conditions pursuant to the order does not prejudice Mr. Sumpano's rights to appeal the decision and order within 30 days as set forth in the MPC and the East Goshen Township Code. That's it. All right, we'll move on. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items?
Eric, this is your chance. No. This is Amanda.
There are no emergency services reports, so we'll move on to approval of the minutes and the treasurer's report. Does anyone, I sent some adjustments. Does anyone have any additional comments on the minutes?
Nothing on the minutes.
Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we approve the final approved minutes for November 12th, 2019, realizing that there may have been a few emails and or calls to make a few minor changes that are included in this document.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Look at the Treasurer's report. Any comments?
One minor one, real minor. John, on the page 1, transportation fund, it's a negative $50 of earned interest. Was that just a
Yeah,
misspelling?
no, that's not a typo. That's, because we have the, what's it called, positive pay, like the.
Oh,
On that. I would observe though that there was an error on the debt service schedule. If you go to, it's the 3rd page in the treasurer's report.
Yeah.
For the general fund, the 2017 bonds, it says remaining principal of $530,000. As Janet pointed out to me in the email, that should be $5.3 million.
Oh, there you go.
That shows
Yes.
what
Yeah.
damage 1 0, small little 0 can lead
Yes.
to. So, but that will be corrected next time.
Very good.
And I also point out
Okay.
in the memo, just real quick, remember that for the December payment to WEGO, we take money out of the East Goshen Police Pension Trust. So that transaction, the accounts payable transaction, which will be $115,000 and change, will be reflected in the next treasurer's report. But I did want to make you aware that there was a $151,278.54 transfer from that East Goshen's Police Pension Trust into the WEGO pension plan.
Thank you, John. Are there any other questions on the bills?
No.
If not, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we graciously accept the receipts and authorize paying the bills as proposed with your corrections on some items once we approve them.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. Okay, we have no old business, so we'll move to new business.
Amanda, you don't have to stay if you don't want to. No, seriously, if you want to go home and
I'll
relax.
stay for a little bit.
Okay, I just want to make sure you felt comfortable.
Yeah,
if you want
okay.
to.
Thank you.
After the meeting, we're gonna wash the windows. Do you want to stay around? and do
No.
this?
No, I think I'm good, thank you.
First on the agenda is consider adoption of the 2020 township budgets and the 2020 WEGO budget. John, you want to take that?
Sure, there's really 3 things. There's the township budget for all funds. There's the WEGO budget version 4, and there's also the 2020 staff salaries, which are based on the resolution from 2008. Since we advertised the budget on November 13th, I made 2 small adjustments. I bumped up the insurance line item by $2,040. We have solid rate quotes now, and so around $195,000 will cover all of our insurance needs. This also reflects $2 million coverage for first and third party cyber insurance. And then I missed this when I did the proposed budget for the refuse fund and the sewer fund. We had discussed way back in May increasing cert fees for, right now we charge $5 for real estate certs and $5 for sewer/refuse certs. And what we're proposing is to go to West Goshen's model, which is $5 for a sewer cert, $5 for a refuse cert. Chris Boylan estimates it costs about $12 to actually process a sewer and a refuse cert. So this would more or less recover our costs. And even with that increase, and that would be part of the fee schedule that would be proposed at the first meeting in January, we'd still, along with West Goshen, have the lowest certs in the area. So there is a recommended recommended motion below that somebody can make.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the 2020 proposed budget in the following amounts. General fund expenses and revenues net of pass-throughs of $10,997,838, including a $461,561 transfer from fund balance to balance the budget. General fund pass-through expenses and revenues of $2,106,900. State liquid fuel fund expenses and revenues of $551,604. Capital Reserve Fund expenses of $3,636,672, and revenues of $2,208,654. Transportation Fund expenses of $185,000 and revenues of $4,000. Sewer Operating Fund expenses and revenues of $3,735,274. Refuse Fund expenses of $1,136,729 and revenues of $1,058,998. Bond Fund expenses of $2,374,901 and revenues of $50,000. Sewer Capital Reserve Fund expenses of $227,000, revenues of $195,000. 277,000, sorry. And Operating Reserve Fund expenses of 0 and revenues of $40,000. I further move that we approve the 2020 staff salaries as proposed and the Westtown East Goshen Police Budget version 4 attached.
I will second that motion.
Is there,
I got one question for John. John, I think it would be appropriate if you gave the reasons for the significant discrepancy in the capital reserve fund between the revenues.
Right, so the capital reserve fund is going to basically pay up front for the construction costs of segments C through E of Paley Pike Trail, as well as the breaching and land improvements at Milltown and Hershey's Mill dams. Because we have received grants for those projects, we can't mingle the grants with bond proceeds. So basically, we have to pay for it on the front end through the capital reserve fund, and then when the projects are completed, basically the bond fund will reimburse the capital reserve fund. However, I assumed that the last reimbursement for the trails would not be made until 2021. So therefore, that sort of reconciliation, that final reconciliation, would take place in 2021. On an accrual basis, it would be pretty much a wash.
Yeah.
Revenues equal expenses, but on a cash basis, which is how we budget, they don't balance.
Right.
That's the.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
any other questions or comments?
I will make one more comment, and it has to do with some recent inquiries about the extent of municipal fund balances. And if you take a brief survey of the funds included in the motion, the respective budgets, you'll see that the total budgeted fund balances, the aggregate is decreasing this next year, almost $4.5 million. And my point is, it shows the extent of funds that are needed to operate a municipality of the size and extent of as East Goshen Township. And there's no volatility there, it's planned, but you need to have fund balances to operate effectively, let alone the other issues of credit, ratings, and the like. I think things are in fine order, and I'm really pleased with the way John and Rick and staff have handled the budget and the finances for the township. Thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Budget is passed.
Good night, Amanda.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Thanks,
Bye,
Amanda.
guys.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Next, we are going to consider Resolution 2019-74, financial policies. John, you're up again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So back in 2013, we developed financial policies. These were actually a real sort of feather in our cap when we got our credit rating from Moody's. They're very impressed with our policies. Since that time, a couple of things have happened, and I'm proposing that we sort of modernize or bring up to date our financial policies to reflect developments over the last 6 or so years. One of the biggest ones, and this is reflected in the budget that you just adopted, is changing the depreciation formula. You may remember in 2013, we distinguished between assets purchased before January 1st, 2014 and those purchased after that date. And the ones purchased before that date, we just applied an inflationary factor to it to calculate depreciation. And I think over time, it's sort of systematically under counting depreciation of our assets. So going back to that old way of depreciation with accumulated depreciation method, I think is a more equitable, and we're not necessarily equitable, but a better way to ensure that we are fully funding our capital reserve funds. Really small, these are mostly superficial things. It used to say that there's almost a typo that I didn't really catch until after we had adopted the policies. Previously, we had the minimum fund balance for the general fund was 20% of expenditures, and really the standard way of measuring fund balance ratios is as a percent of revenues. So this would just change that from expenses to revenues. And then it also, it's a superficial thing, changes the name of the capital reserve fund and the sewer capital reserve fund back to those names. We had officially been referring to them as the sinking fund and sewer sinking fund, but as we discovered when we issued debt 2.5 years ago, those terms sinking fund have very specific meaning and it caused confusion. And last but not least, about 3 months after we adopted the resolution 2013, the state amended the second class township code to allow operating reserve funds to have 25% of revenues in them as opposed to 5%. So this change would just acknowledge that cap is higher. As a practical matter, we have already transferred, 6 years ago, we transferred enough money into that operating reserve.
Do you want to make a comment on the fact that, at least in the capital reserve fund, when it comes time to replace,
Whether it's a roof or a truck or anything in between, that we can do it by paying cash and without having to finance or borrow money one way or another. So we make sure that essentially by properly calculating the depreciation of our existing assets, that we are that we have enough money in that fund, in the capital reserve fund, to replace that truck after 10 years or replace that that roof after 25. So.
and John, I just want to make sure that I remember what we do. We use a steady rate, depreciation rate of 3%, right? We don't adjust it for anything else.
Well,
right?
we use an inflationary factor of 3% for out years.
Period.
Well, yeah. Well, in the current year, we use what's called the ENR index. It's a standard construction index, so that goes up and down a little bit. But 3% for future years is our conservative estimate of inflation. Where in fact the Federal Reserve, benchmarks 2%, but we all know construction costs for whatever reason are going up faster than just regular meat and potatoes.
But depreciation rate is based on the useful life.
Yeah, it's straight line depreciation, but with an inflationary factor built in, so that
You
$10,000 car
pick up.
is actually depreciated at $11,000 over the course of its life.
I think the key point for everybody to take away is the fact that when our assets when the life is expired, we have enough money available to purchase the replacement vehicle or whatever it is that we're purchasing. And if we over depreciated it, it just falls into the next vehicle and reduces our costs. Is that right, John? To a degree.
If we over depreciate, yeah, I mean, at some point you kind of want to reconcile and look at what the accumulated depreciation of all your assets are compared to what the fund balance of the capital reserve fund is. On a purchase by purchase basis, that's probably too granular, but doing it every couple of years, making sure that you're on the right track is good.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt resolution 2019-74, establishing the financial policies just discussed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is passed.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
John, thank you, great
My
work.
pleasure.
Carmen, do you want to handle the group bids?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our Public Works Director with staff have opened group bids for items that are needed in different areas of the township for materials, operating stuff, fuel. So the following bids have been lowest responsible. Riley Fuel, we recommend that Riley and Son Incorporated be awarded the bid for fuel of $22,044. Soda ash, which is used at the sewer plant, Ridley plant, we recommend that Maine Pool and Chemicals be awarded to that bid. They were the lowest responsible bid for the soda ash. Rental equipment without operators, we recommend Foley Incorporated be awarded for the bid of rental equipment without operators. Again, that's used typically for public works and or municipal. And we have signs that we have to do occasionally. So Garden State Highway Products was the lowest responsible bid. I think they were the only bid for $10,151. So I would ask for an approval.
Next page.
Oh, I'm sorry, next page. Yeah, you're right. Milling, I forgot that. Milling machine rental, we recommend Groff Tractor, which is called CC&T, be awarded for the milling machine, $14,400. Triaxle dump rental, dump truck, RW Fetters was the lowest responsible bid per hour for the triaxle dump truck. And roadside litter collection, we recommend AJ Bolinsky Incorporated, and there is no change from last year. Their prices will hold for 2020 for 12 collections of $11,520. So I recommend those items be approved so they can get started on purchasing.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just have one question. John, how, with fuel, how do you come up with a fixed amount, with
Fixed
versus a rack price or that?
It's fixed based on a specific day, and then it's just based on the rack price at the port. So it goes up and down. It's yeah, the blacktop's the same.
So the number is.
You're basically, you're locking in the delivery charge.
That's right, okay. Thanks.
John, most of these bids, these group bids are single bids. Have we elected not to rebid, which I think we're entitled to do?
Well, you could rebid, theoretically you should alter the specs. But the challenge is that because of the bonding and stuff, people, they don't want to get involved. We post it, we put it on the internet, we send it out to everybody that bids or submitted bids the last year, for anybody that has expressed an interest, because out on constant contact.
I only raised the question to make sure everybody understood that we had a reason for doing what we're doing. And I think it's a legitimate reason.
And Ricky is correct that the bonding that they have to go through, which gets into the insurance companies, and the insurance companies get into your financials. I know that for a fact. Some of the companies just don't want to go through the aggravation.
Yeah, the bid bond always seems to be an issue, whether it's $500.
Not so much bid bond.
Oh, the performance bond, right?
Performance
Excuse me.
bond.
Yeah,
The performance bond is through a third company typically, through your insurance company, but they want to see your company financials for 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, they are pretty thorough that hopefully they're not going to allow a company to come in and walk off the job and not have surety, not have the money to do it. So it's a lot of paperwork.
Isn't there some current legislation underway for changing this bidding situation where you get into a single bid and starting to limit now the additional work that a municipality has to do?
Yeah, I saw something on that PSAT's presentation, and I can't remember the nuance. It was like, if you don't get, that's right, if you get no bids, then you're permitted to contract with anyone you like. I think it was something like that.
The original legislation was to be for materials.
Not labor.
If you couldn't get more than one, if you bid for materials more than twice, you could then negotiate a price. The new law, which is proposed, if you're bidding for services, it also adds services.
Services, that's right.
That's a change.
That's right, yeah.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's passed. Next. Consider the 2020 shredding event.
So this was from just a comment Marty made, who says staff doesn't diligently follow up on every remark that Marty makes.
Thank you, Glenn, I appreciate it.
Should we offer a shredding event? And basically, we can do it for $550. The best date for it would be Saturday, November 7th, 2020 with Wiggins. And we would advertise it the same way that we advertise the e-recycling thing. I was surprised by, frankly, how cheap it is. Seems like a good service to offer.
John, I would suggest that as a motion that we accept the recommendation. I think it's worthwhile trying this. I must say that I was also surprised that it was going to cost so little for the 3 or 4 hours that we're doing this. And I suspect that, like me, there'll be a number of folks that have a lot of stuff that they want shredded.
I would just like to mention that I would not be surprised, this 3-hour block, I would make sure the company is aware, could very well turn into a double or triple of that. Once this goes out on our website and people know, you could be having a line with people wanting to get rid of paperwork that may far exceed the block. So at 3 hours, you're gonna just tell the people, well, fine, thank you very much. Where do we keep going?
Well, I mean, there's two kind of variables, and there is a hourly rate to. I think it was. I want to say it was like 150 per extra hour. It was actually less than the regular rate. And so we can just sort of have them on retainer or standby or whatever for that extra hour. One truck holds 8,000 pounds of shredded paper, which just sort of blew me away. And I was thinking at first we need 2 trucks, but talking to the woman, she said that it's really not practical in 3 or 4 hours to shred enough for 2 trucks. So what I would suggest is, yeah, we reserve the date and then we have like an extra hour built in.
And if it takes 2 hours, it takes 2 hours.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that the company, the awarding company realizes that they might be far exceeding 3 hours if they don't get mad that they can't leave. It could be longer.
We need a motion.
Yeah, I did make one.
Marty made one before his,
Is there a second?
I'll second.
The motion was to accept the recommendation.
along with extra cost if needed for the hourly rate.
Yeah.
Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're gonna have a shredding event.
The last item on the agenda was a stormwater agreement for a new single-family home. And this is down on Corner Cross. They're putting a house in for the,
Rick, just going back to this shredding thing, perhaps in the issue of the newsletter preceding the event, it
Yeah.
might be worthwhile to put a little verb in there so
Yeah.
people.
Oh, of course, yeah, same way we do the e-waste, that goes without saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Marty's the way to go.
Yeah, it's okay, but.
Go back to see it.
anyway, so it's Lime Road, it's at Thorncroft, the Dixons are putting in a house for, I guess, I don't know if they call him the farm manager, but for whoever the head person down there, so.
I'll make the motion. Madam Chair, I move the board authorize the chairwoman to execute a stormwater management operation maintenance agreement for 204 Lime Road.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Rick, just as a matter of curiosity, looking at this, what is the reason that the water resources people are coming here?
I was gonna ask that.
That's a night that we happen to be not going to be available here.
The county, it has, in order to comply with DEP mandates, the county is going to update the watersheds plan and their Act 167 plan. It's both of those two plans. And this all gets back into a revised ordinance around S4s, and we're the last, December 12th is the last event, and I guess 5 series swing that the authority has to go on around the county. They're trying to get this list of public input on your thoughts about watershed.
And then this is gonna trickle down to each municipality, update
At
their ordinances.
the end of the day, the county, the Water Resources Authority is taking lead. We're gonna come draft up a model ordinance with input from everybody, which will tweak the existing enforcement.
Michael, wasn't that nice? Trickling and water. That was very nice. Did you plan that?
There's no any other matter. I don't think we have any more public comment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank you. Thanks, John.
Record.
Eric, if you continue to give public comment like that, we're not gonna have a meeting.